so we're going to talk today about listing presentations, but before we get into the actual presentation itself, I want to start with just talking to you a little bit about one of the big differences that we talk about versus what most other companies in terms of just all of our trainings and everything is part of what we want to focus on at Everest is your leadership ability. And really, at the end of the day, helping you to become a better leader, because that's really what our job is to lead people through a process. So just keep that in mind as kind of the basis of what we're talking about is really what we are trying to become, and what we are for the people is leaders. Okay. Now, there's two parts to a listing presentation. So as we go through, we're going to talk about the listing presentation. There's two parts to a presentation. The first part that has to take place in a listing presentation is choose me. Okay. First thing that has to happen in any listing presentation that you go on is you have to get them to choose you. Then after they've chosen you, we can work on the second part of the presentation, which is price. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, for you guys on Zoom, make sure you throw in your name and the office in the chat box, just so that I have a record of who was there. Everyone here, I think, signed in, right? But for you guys on Zoom, make sure you throw your name in the chat box so that I can mark you off on my spreadsheet as having attended the class. All right. Two parts to the listing presentation. The first part is we got to get them to choose us. And this after that is then when we talk price. So now, with that being said, let me say it this way. Do not talk about the price or commission. So when I say price, that includes commission. Okay. So either the price of their house or the commission you're going to charge. So when I say price, that includes both. Do not talk about the price or the commission until they've chosen you. Now, why? Why would we not want to talk about the price or the commission until they have chosen me as their agent?
Because they already don't want you. And so if they don't choose you and you tell them the commission or price that they're not happy with, they really don't want you.
Okay, so good. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm going to say it a little differently, but same thing. Does it matter what the commission you're going to charge them is if they aren't going to work with you anyway? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, what if I said I would do it for free, but you didn't trust me for anything? Would it matter? Would you still work with me? No. So that's the reason we don't talk price. There's a second reason to it as well, but we'll go through that. All right. So there are 6 things that have to happen in order for somebody to choose you as their agent. There are 6 things that have to take place in order for you to get the listing. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that. And then we'll get into the actual listing presentation, what that needs to look like. Now, first thing that has to happen, and some of this you will have heard me talk about before, because some of these things also have to happen in order for you to set an appointment with them. So even to get the appointment, you have to have some of these take place. But once you get on the appointment, there's 6 things that need to take place. So the first one is there's got to be a connection. So you have to connect, or you could say it as have some rapport built with them. Okay. In order for somebody to be willing to choose you, the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a connection and some rapport. And in fact, right before we started this class, we have a number of managers from our California offices in town right now. And for you guys in St. George, Alex is up here at a training that the managers are doing, and our managers here in Utah are participating as well. But one of the things that happened is right before this class started, George was in here talking to the managers, and what he talked to them about is in terms of their recruiting, of just have a conversation with people. And so why I say that is part of what we are doing on a listing presentation, if it's done right, is it really should just be basically a conversation that we're going to have. But in order for them to be willing to have you or to share with you stuff, you're going to have some connection or rapport. Now, connection and rapport does not necessarily mean what some people think of it as. meaning that when you walk in the house and you see that they have a cat, that you go, oh, you have a cat, I love cats. Like, that's not what I mean by connection and rapport. Meaning, I've done a lot of business transactions with people where I didn't have to get to know exactly every single thing about the person, or that we both liked dogs or cats or whatever it is, doesn't matter. But there does have to be some connection or some rapport that is built. And we'll talk about how to do that as we go through the listing presentation. But here's the thing. And I would say the same thing to some extent in your prospecting as well. If you're going to make a mistake, make it here. Meaning, error on the side of having too much of a connection. If you're going to make a mistake between having too much or not enough, error on the side of too much time spent on connection or rapport. All right, next. Second thing that we have to have happen in order for them to choose you is you have to reduce, oops, spelling it wrong, reduce risk. So the second thing that has to happen is we have to reduce risk. Okay? Now, what I mean by that is by you creating this connection or the rapport with the people, they are now going to allow you to lead them. So when I say reduce the risk, reducing the risk of them following you. So if we're talking about leadership, it's reducing the risk of them following you, meaning that they're not scared to do that. Now, as a result of that, that brings us to number 3, which is trust. So they have to then trust you. There has to be some trust built. And as part of that, as you create the connection and reduce the risk, that will allow them to trust you. Now, stop and think about it for a minute. When you have had multiple opportunities to work with a salesperson or multiple salespeople, whether it's buying a car or you go to RC Willey or something to buy some furniture, typically when you choose who you're going to have help you, what usually is the reason you would say you chose that person?
You like them or trust?
Okay, good. It usually boils down to they helped you feel comfortable. Therefore, you felt like you liked them or you felt like you trusted them. At the end of the day, it really boils down to this. For me, I know when I've gone on listing appointments that I didn't get the listing, and I would then call to find out from the seller, why, help me understand what did the other person do or what did I not do that I should have done that would have helped you. And almost every single time they will say, we just felt more comfortable with this person, which is another way of saying that they had a connection and rapport, the person reduced risk to them, and they felt that they could trust that person. They felt more comfortable. That's what all of this is about. Okay, next. Next thing that has to happen now, and again, I will show you as we now go through and talk about the listing presentation, I'm going to point out to you where each of these things is taking place throughout the process. Okay. Next, then, number 4 thing that has to happen is we have to create value. So now that we've established that trust with them, they feel comfortable, they're allowing us to lead them. What I need to do next is I've got to create the value. Now, in terms of creating value, the reason that is important is there are all along I-15, I don't know that you guys in St. George have it, but all along I-15 around the Wasatch Front, there are billboards from one real estate company that offers to help people sell their house for a discount, right? Everybody know who I'm talking about? Yeah. I wasn't going to say any names, but yeah, sure. Might as well though, right? When I just said that. Why do people go and use them? Let me ask it this way. Why would somebody go pay $1,500 to get their home sold versus somebody else that will pay $30,000 to get their home sold? What, Mariano, you got a listing, you're going to collect $30,000, right?
Right.
Why does somebody do that? So Steve, you started to say something. Why would somebody choose to pay 30,000 when they could get it for 1,500 potentially? No, they're not really gonna get it for 1,500.
Because they're looking at the value or supposedly assuming the value they're getting.
Well, they feel like they're gonna save money by listing it for a lot cheaper rates.
Right.
So the reason they choose them, you're right on, is they think they're gonna save money. But really what they're saying, when somebody goes and chooses to work with a discount brokerage, what they're really saying is, I don't see the value in paying you to help me get my home sold. Right? I mean, really, that's what it is. So part of what our job is, and when we are on a listing appointment, is I have got to create that value. I have got to figure out a way in the listing presentation to create the value. Now, remember, I said, we're not going to talk price or commission until we've done these things. That's the part of the reason why, is because I need the opportunity to create my value. I need to be able to show them that I'm worth the money. The other thing that I always like to bring up on this is, why are we all not driving? What's the cheapest car on the market today? Like if I wanted to go buy a brand new vehicle and I wanted to get the very cheapest one, which one am I going to buy?
Toyota.
The Yugo, probably just.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
I usually like to use the Yugo because then it doesn't offend anybody because nobody's driving one of those, right? But I've found some people trade. You know what a Yugo is?
Mhm.
Yeah. See, that's the problem. Is now we're getting to where I'm showing my age here. So when I was a kid, there was a car that was called a Yugo that was basically like a lawnmower engine, right? Like it was a car with a lawnmower engine. So anyway, okay. Why do people go and spend money buying a luxury vehicle when really at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything different than a Yugo would, or whatever, a Mitsubishi, whatever.
Comfortability, the looks.
Okay, so notice that though. But what I want you, the reason I'm bringing that up, what I want you guys to see is, if somebody sees the value, they'll pay for it. Meaning, the reason we're willing to go and buy a luxury vehicle is because the ride's going to be smoother, or it gives us the prestige of people are going to be like, oh, that's a great looking car, like whatever it is. But we see the value, because if we didn't, nobody would ever go buy a Mercedes or let's take it even more extreme, a Bentley, or any of those type of vehicles. Why would somebody go spend $500,000 on a car when all it's going to do is get you from point A to point B the exact same way that the cheap vehicle would? Well, at the end of the day, they see some type of value from it, right? So just recognize the same thing. If we have done our job and we create the value, we shouldn't have any issue with them over the commission. Okay. Next, so how do we do that is part of number 5. This is kind of a subset of number 4, but we have to do this in addition to the creating value, and that is separate yourself. You have to separate yourself from the competition. So part of the creating of the value, and why I say that is because, especially if you have any of you guys called for sale by owners or expired listings?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay.
My first appointment, I told the guy, because I set the appointment, he's like, well, how do I know it's you? I was like, I have really big glasses, you can't miss me. And so he remembered me.
That's good.
how I separate
Yeah, that's how you separate yourself. Good. So, but when you were calling for sale by owners or expireds, or are currently, whatever it is, how often do you run into somebody that says, oh, I've already talked with somebody from Century 21?
Every time.
So yeah, almost every time. So part of why we have to separate ourselves from the competition is because we may be going on an appointment that is competing with somebody who is a member of our own company even. There might be other Century 21 people. So we have to separate ourselves from the competition. So meaning sometimes they may see the value in a Century 21. In fact, by the way, let me say this. As far as real estate brand recognition, Century 21 has the best brand recognition. I started actually at a competitor, which I'll tell you the name because it relates to the story I'm about to say. But I started with Coldwell Banker. And I can't tell you how many times at the office that I worked in that was in West Jordan, that people would walk into the office and ask us where our ATM was. Or could I cash a check? I can promise you, we've never had that at Century 21. But at Coldwell Banker, people would come in because they assumed we were a bank. And they thought that's what we did. So for me, just one of the things that you can know that's great is in terms of being with Century 21, already you have the value of the brand because people know that Century 21 sells houses. So that's good. Then what you've got to do is separate yourself. So think of it as we're going to create the value in the company, but and ourselves, but then I have to separate myself from everyone else out there. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. And then number 6, finally, then we have to close. Okay. We have to close in order to get the listing. So, Aiden, let me pick on you first. You're on the phone prospect. Somebody says to you, yeah, we thought about selling our house. We'd love to have you come out and help us get our home sold, or at least talk to us about it. So, but how much is your commission?
Oh man, that's a great question. So tonight at 5, when I meet with you, I'm gonna go over that, all right?
Okay, sure. Can you give me an idea of how much it's gonna be?
Yeah, it would be better to talk in person, just so I can go over all what I do for you. Does that make sense?
I guess, I don't know. So,
Great.
okay,
Yeah, see
good.
you
But
tomorrow.
so now, I like what he's doing there though, because notice he's not gonna tell me the price. Now, here's why. The challenge is what if he would have said 7%? At that point, if I haven't chosen him, if these 5 out of these 6 pieces aren't in place, I'm gonna say, yeah, oh, you know what? No, that's okay. We're not gonna pay that much commission.
Oh, I got a better one too.
Okay.
Man, it varies a lot. So when I meet with you, I'm gonna go over exactly what I do, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have an exact idea of what that's gonna be.
Good, I like that. Yeah, so I do a different version of that. So for me, what I like to say to them is if they push. So like, I like how Aiden said it, is the first thing I'll usually say is, hey, that is going to be one of the first things we're going to talk about when I get out to your house. Okay. And if that satisfies, great. But if they push, well, can you give me an idea? Then what I usually will say is, commissions range, they're negotiable in the state of Utah. And because of that, I first need to hear what it is you want to accomplish in order for me to know what commission we should charge so that we can make sure we're taking care of you the very best. But just to give you a range of an idea, I have done commissions as low as 0, and I've done it as high as 8%. So it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 8%. But don't worry about what the commission is going to be, because we're going to figure out what works best for you. And if we can't come to an agreement, then you don't have to worry about it. Sound good? And then they go, okay, sounds good. All right. So have I emphasized it enough? Don't talk about the price, no matter what. Because in their mind, you're all the same. Like, that's the biggest thing you need to understand, is in the consumer's mind, everybody's the same. All agents are the same. And in their mind, the only thing, a lot of people, I shouldn't say all, in a lot of people's mind, the only thing you're doing for them is putting it on the MLS. Now, if that were true, that that's all we did, then with the invention of the internet, so going back to, year 2000-ish, I remember being worried that people aren't going to need real estate agents because I felt like back then the value we had was we had this secret thing called the MLS that other people didn't have access to, and that's why they needed us. Well, then all of a sudden, every company started putting all their listings onto the internet. And once that happened, we were a little like, oh, are people going to need us anymore? Well, the truth is, what we found is more people are using agents rather than selling it by owner since the internet happened, since properties and things have been showing up on there. So don't, just recognize there is value you bring besides putting it on the MLS, because if that's all it was, then we could all just throw our stuff onto the internet and it would sell and the people wouldn't need an agent. Yet more people are using an agent. So recognize there is value and people will pay for that if they see the value. That's the key. All right, questions?
Why do you think that is the case if we're using an agent more now than before?
That's a good question. I think it's a couple of things. And I don't know that I know the answer, but I can give you my opinion. Because, and here's probably the best way I'll explain it to you. So I remember in about 2003, that was, because 2003 was really kind of the time that most of the companies started creating websites and putting their properties on them and all that kind of stuff. And I remember also a website coming up around that same time that was called WebMD, still available today. Have any of you guys ever been on WebMD?
I'm dead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what happened when you went onto WebMD?
Nothing good.
Dying.
Yeah, your assumption is you're gonna die. Like, oh my gosh, I think I have cancer and I've got 2 weeks to live. I bet, you know. So I was talking to my neighbor who is an OBGYN. And I asked him, this was about 2003, and WebMD was kind of this popular thing. And I remember I went to my neighbor who's a doctor and I said, aren't you worried about, like, people aren't going to need to come to the doctor because you can just go on the internet and find out what's wrong with you. And he told me back then, I didn't get it then like I do today, like what Marion was saying. What?
He laugh at you.
Yeah, yeah. What he said is actually what we are finding is people go on there and check their symptoms, and then they're worried they're really sick. So we're seeing actually more people come to the doctor as a result of WebMD, not less. So I would say it's somewhat similar to that, is people will go on to the internet and do a search of how to sell my house or whatever. And I think once they start to see everything that's involved in it, they kind of go, I'd rather just pay somebody to do it.
And I can relate to that. I think last year I only have 5 days left to live. I had
Oh,
cancer. Yeah.
you really did, or you just thought you did?
Well, according to the symptoms.
Oh, okay, yeah, when you checked WebMD. I know, I was like a little like, no. Well, I thought you were referring to when you had COVID, because I know you were
No.
wishing you were dead when you had COVID,
Yeah,
weren't you?
for a moment.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions on that? Does this make sense?
Yeah, it's also kind of, because like, even as a buyer, you look at a home and you go, well, I mean, how am I gonna get into this home? A real estate agent, and then
Yeah.
just keep calling us.
Well, and that is part of the thing, that's the thing, I guess, I'll divert on the rabbit hole for a minute, but that's the thing actually I worry a little bit about in real estate right now, is because of the pressure on our commissions down, and which again, where that pressure is coming from is us as agents. It's not coming from the public. It's agents not feeling like they deserve to be paid the commissions that we are getting. It's not the consumer, because 6% is 6%. Like, it doesn't matter what your house is worth, 6% is 6%. So it's the agents in their mind feeling like, I can't charge some $30,000 to go and do this. Like, that's what happens in our minds. Well, my fear is, because of the pressure down on the buyer agency side of commissions, that what's going to happen is at some point, and in fact, the company we talked about earlier with the billboards, sometimes they just ask the seller, well, I think every time they ask the seller, how much do you want to offer to the buyer? I saw one listing they had where they were offering $1 if you bring me the buyer. Well, as a result of that, if this continues, what's going to happen is we are going to have to start charging a buyer to help them buy a house, which could, in my mind, I worry a little bit that may be the downfall. Because as it is right now, why wouldn't a buyer use an agent? Because there's no cost to, essentially no cost to using an agent. So what?
Like a few $100.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, a few $100 is all. Okay, all right, good. So this is the key piece of it now. So keep in mind, there's two parts to it. Choose me, then we'll dock price. So now, with that being said, let's go into the listing presentation. The first thing that we're going to do on a listing presentation is what we call TAP, which stands for, okay, good. So I'm sure nobody on Zoom heard you guys, so I'll say it again. But it's thank, acknowledge, and promise. So the TAP stands for thank, acknowledge, and promise. So here's what it looks like. when you, which wouldn't it be nice if when you were in real estate school, they would have taught you this stuff so that, so you could come out and feel like you knew what you were doing, but, okay. So you're gonna thank, acknowledge, and promise. So as soon as you get to a seller or a potential seller's house, what we want to do is we want to thank them for taking the time to meet with us. I want to acknowledge something about the house. So typically on the acknowledge piece, what I'm looking for is something about the house that I can acknowledge them for. Whether it's, you know, the flower bed that's out front, the color of the front door, I mean, you know, whatever it is, try to find something in the curb appeal of the home, you know, how their lawn is manicured, how green it is, there's no weeds, whatever it is. Find something that you can acknowledge them for, okay? Is you want to, so I want to thank them for taking the time to meet with me, acknowledge something. Now, what if the house is just a piece of crap and the grass has weeds and the door's ugly?
Pick out the least ugly thing and wow, look at that.
Okay, so we could pick out the least ugly thing, or just acknowledge their time. Just thank them for being willing to take the time to let you come over. So worst case scenario, we're going to acknowledge just their time. But if you can find something about the house to acknowledge them on, that's going to be even better.
Maybe it's location.
Yeah, it could be even just the location. Okay, then the promise, P for promise. Promise them something. Give them some type of a promise that, hey, at the end of our meeting, I'm going to give you some great information. I promise at the end of our meeting, you're going to feel more prepared to what it takes to get your home sold, like something, some type of a promise that you can throw in there. Okay. And then the other piece of it, if you want to, which depending on the person, I sometimes will do this, sometimes not, is I'll throw some humor in there as well. So for example, I may say, Miriam, you know, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. Wow, when I pulled up and I saw how the curb appeal of your house, like, I don't know who has the green thumb here, but like, your house looks amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get to let you know, look, when I leave here in 3 hours, I promise you that.
Oh, yeah.
So I would sometimes throw in, you know, 3 or 4 hours from now, when I'm done with this presentation, you're gonna have some really good information. And a lot of times they're like, wait, what? I thought you said it was gonna be like 30 minutes or something. And I'm just kidding. It won't be 4 hours. But I do want to just let you know that I'm going to give you some really good information that's going to help you feel more prepared and not be as worried about getting your home sold, something on that, on the promise. Okay. So thank, acknowledge, promise. Next, the second thing, or actually, I'm just going to, the way, I don't know why I do it this way, but I like to just draw it as a line. So I'm not really numbering it as number 2. And I don't know why I do it this way, but I do. So look at the house. Okay. And I guess the reason I do it this way is because it's not really a step. I mean, it's a step in the process, but I don't, for whatever reason, it doesn't deserve a number. I don't know.
It's like,
Okay.
obviously you'll do that.
Yeah, maybe that's it. So you're going to go look at the house. Now, in terms of going and looking at the house. So when you get to the home, you're going to thank, acknowledge, and promise. Then you're going to tell them you want to take a look at the home. Now, there's one of 2 ways you can go about doing this, and you decide which route you want to go with it. I'll give you the advantages and disadvantages, and then you decide. And that is either you go and look at the house with them, meaning you have them show you through the house, or you say to them, I want to discover your home through the eyes of a buyer. Therefore, I want to walk through it by myself. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So either I have them show me through the house, or you just go look at it yourself. Now, go ahead.
I mean, you might, a doctor might have to say this, I don't know, but it really depends too on like the personality type. Because if they're like really entertainer and like they like to do that, they're like, oh my gosh, like let me show you the house, it's so awesome. Versus like an analytic who's just gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense for you to do that. So it's kind of gauge their personality type.
Good.
That's probably gonna help your cause a little bit.
Good. Yeah. So here's what I would say on that is, for me, how I decide, and the way Aiden said it's great as far as like look at their personality type. But for me, I typically am going to just look more at, do I feel like I need the connection and rapport? If I don't feel like I have connection and rapport with the people, I'm gonna have them show me through the house as a way to build that connection and rapport. If I feel like I've got it, then I'm probably not. Now, so the other thing is, if you have them show you through the house, it's going to take longer to look at the house. So that's the other way that I use to decide if I'm going to ask them to show me through or not, is how much time do I have for the appointment? Now, let me back up for a second though, because even if I don't have a ton of time, I want to reinforce something I said earlier. If you're going to make a mistake on one of these, which one should you err on? Connection and rapport. So even though, so keep in mind, I'm saying, if I don't have a lot of time, I'm probably not going to have them show me through the house. However, if this piece is so crucial that if I feel like I need it, I'll spend most of the time doing this rather than saying, okay, I got to hurry and get in and out. Because what good does it do me to hurry and get in and get out if I don't ever get the connection, which then doesn't reduce the risk and doesn't have a chance for them to feel safe or trust me? Then I just wasted my time anyway. So for me, the most important piece of deciding, do you have them show you the home or not, is do you need the connection or rapport? If you do, have them show you the house. If you feel like you're good with it, then, and you're shorter on time, I'm gonna say, I want to discover the home through the eyes of a buyer. I want to look at it the way a buyer is going to look at it. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's after the tap, I'm going to go look at the house. Then number 2 is, sometimes I put this as map. Sometimes I just call it the game plan. Sometimes I'll even say overview. However you want to call it. But here's what the second piece of this is, everybody likes to know where they're going. Meaning, pretty much every class, and I haven't actually thought this through, but I think pretty much every class, I will start the class by kind of telling you guys, okay, here's what we're going to do. And in fact, today, I know I did. I said, okay, we're going to go through and talk about the listing appointment. But before we do that, I got to talk to you about, there's 2 parts to a listing presentation. So with a seller, they're nervous about you coming over to their house. So they're unsure of like, what's it going to be like and how pushy are you going to be and all of those kinds of things. So as a result of that, part of what I want to do is give them this overview or a map of what we're going to talk about. Now, so the map on this would stand for motivation, ability, and price. But ultimately,
Motivation, ability, and what?
price. Motivation, ability, and price is what the map would stand for. But ultimately, I'm giving them this overview of what we're going to talk about. Okay, and there's 4 things. So the first one is, and I'll give you basically the way I say it to the seller in just 1 second. But the first one is needs, wants, and expectations. Okay, needs, wants, and expectations. So that's remember, I'm just giving them an overview. So one of the things I'm going to be saying to them is, hey, I want to be finding out what your needs are, your wants, and ultimately what your expectations are. Then number 2 that we're going to talk about after their needs, wants, and expectations is a plan of action. Or you might think of it, I'm trying to come up with a better way of saying this, and I'm feeling like plan of action is better, but a lot of times I'll say marketing. But that's a little bit confusing because I'm actually not going to talk to them about marketing. Or at least I should say it this way. It's highly unlikely that I'm going to talk to them actually about marketing. And when I say that, meaning like all the stuff that Century 21 does to get a home sold, it is very unlikely that we're going to have that conversation. And I'll show you why that is. But a lot of times I might say that to the person because at that point, that's what they're going to relate to is I'm going to show you what I do to get a home sold. Okay. So the first thing is we're going to talk about their needs, wants, and expectations. Then we're going to talk about what do we do to get a home sold. Then number 3 is we're going to talk about the market. Now, when I say we're gonna talk about the market, there's subcategories to that too, which I'm not gonna necessarily say this to them. In a roundabout way, I will. And that is the macro, like the big picture of what's going on in the market. B is gonna be pricing. And then C is CMA. And then number 4 on this, which I guess technically these should have been A, B, C, huh? Oh, well, don't tell an English teacher. And then number 4 is close. We have to close. Now, so let me show you what this looks like. So Mary, I came over to your house and I said, thanks for having me come over. Want to acknowledge how great the curb appeal, all that stuff, the promise, da. Show me through the house. We've gone and looked at the house. We come back, we sit down and I say, okay, Mary. So let me just give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to ask you some questions that will help me understand what your needs, wants, and your expectations are. But I'll also share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. Okay. Then after that, we're going to talk about, so what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than everyone else? Okay. And then after I've shared with you what I do that's different than everyone else in getting their home sold, then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the real estate market. We're going to talk about what's going on with the market and how that's going to affect you. And then we'll get to basically what the price is of your home. Can you guys see how I just hit it? The way I said it, but we're going to talk about what's going on in the market. We'll talk about how that's going to affect your price. And then we'll talk about, what we're going to do or what price we should put on your home. And then after that, Miriam, if you're comfortable and confident in everything I've had to say, then I'll just ask you to sign some paperwork. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, good. Now, notice what just happened. What did I just get from her?
A lot of calmness, like you took away all my anxiety of this meeting.
Yeah, good. So first thing that's happened is I just took away the anxiety of, okay, now she understands. First, I'm going to ask some questions to find out what's important. Then I'll show you what I'm going to do to get the home sold. Then we're going to talk about what's going on in the market, how that's going to affect your home and what we should price your home at. And then after that, if you're comfortable and confident, I'll ask you to sign some paperwork. So what's that last thing that I just did?
Kind of setting it up to hopefully make them sign,
That's right. I've set it up to make it easy to ask her to sign the contract. Because I've already told her that after we've done all this, if you're comfortable and confident in everything, then I'm just going to ask you to sign paperwork, okay?
Yeah.
And she said, how did you say it?
Fair.
Fair enough. Okay, so she's fair enough, great. Now number 3 then. Number 3 then is going to be the questions. Okay. Now, let me re-say what I said in case you didn't catch it before. After I've done the tap, I've gone, looked at the house, I've said, okay, Mary, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to ask you some questions. Remember I said that right here?
Yeah.
To find out what your needs, wants, and expectations are. Here's the questions. So think of it this way. This is going to take place right there. So I'm going to now ask the questions to find out the needs, wants, and expectations. So up here, I didn't do it. I just said, this is what we're going to do. Kind of like if you were going in for surgery and a doctor comes in and goes, okay, here's what's going to happen is first we're going to have some anesthesia. We're going to they're explaining to you what the surgery is going to look like. Then they go do it. That's what we did. We're explaining, here's what this meeting is going to look like. Now let's do it. Okay. So the questions that I'm going to ask. Now on the questions that we're going to ask, we want to use questions that are what I like to call directives. Directives are going to be things like describe for me, help me understand, share with me, tell me about. So here's the key thing. What we don't want to do in this questions section is ask yes or no, or get closed-ended questions. We don't want questions that are yes, no necessarily. Now, we may ask a few, but as a general rule, you want to ask questions that are designed around helping them to share what's going on. So think of it this way. Let me even back up from that and say it this way. Remember, what we are trying to do with this is create the connection, reduce risk, and create this trust, right? But we've also got to create value and then separate ourselves and close. So what I'm doing with this, think of it this way. The way that you're going to get people to trust you and to feel safe is by you being able to create value and separate yourself. Well, by asking the questions, well, let me even say it this way. Everyone wants to be listened to and understood. They want to be, the way you're going to create the connection and rapport is by you listening to them and understanding what's important to them. So the reason we're going to ask the questions this way is if you ask people closed-ended questions that are yes, no questions, it does not give them the chance to share what's going on up here, okay? And so the way that we are going to get this listing is we want to be the person that they say, I just felt most comfortable with you. Well, the way you're going to do that is through asking these questions, but you've got to ask questions in such a way that it allows them to talk, okay? So we're going to start the questions with either describe for me, help me understand, share with me, tell me about, okay? Typically, I like to start with the question of describe for me or help me understand, just some version of this. What ultimately are you wanting to accomplish? So share with me what you're ultimately wanting to accomplish in getting this home sold. Now, once they answer that question, don't be in such a hurry to go ask the next question. Instead, what we want to do is dive down deeper on the question. So when they say, so Miriam, are you okay still
Oh, yeah.
interacting? Okay, so Miriam, help me understand ultimately what you're trying to accomplish in getting your home sold.
Well, you know, I want to get the most amount of money without paying everybody else a lot of money.
Okay, so it sounds like ultimately that, but when I say ultimately, why did you do that? So why do you want, so now notice, I'm not going on to the next question. I'm still sticking with this to say, so, but ultimately, like you're saying to get the most amount of money, but for what? Like ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish?
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I definitely want to get the.
See
most
now,
amount of-
hold on, sorry, let me interrupt. Now, what did she just do?
Oh, yeah.
So basically, she didn't fully understand what I was wanting her to tell me. And so she kind of, oh, okay, now I get it. So now go ahead.
So yeah, I definitely want to get the most amount of money for my home, so that way I can move to California and enjoy their sun.
Okay, so it sounds like you're wanting to move from here to California. So what's taking you to California?
The weather,
Okay,
yes.
So
And
ultimately-
those taxes, you know.
the what?
The taxes.
You love to pay taxes?
I do. Uncle Sam, so.
Okay, so now, but notice what I just did there though, is I started with, help me understand what you're trying to accomplish. She kind of just said, well, I want to get the most amount of money. Okay, but why do you want to get the most amount of money? Like what's causing you to want to sell? Well, I want to go to California. Okay, well, so, you know, why do you want to, what's in
I enjoy the
California?
sunshine and beaches and.
Yeah, and so from that standpoint, you might be like, okay, yeah, so just you're sick of the weather here. You want to get away from the snow and spend some time at the beach, getting
Yeah.
some sun and vitamin D and all that fun stuff, right? Okay, so now wait, so now what just happened though for you, if you were the seller and I was asking the questions and having that conversation, how is that making you feel?
It makes me feel like I need to hurry up and get to California because it's cold.
Okay, good. So that's one thing, is it's gonna help her feel that way.
I see the vision.
But the other thing is hopefully she's seeing and sensing that I understand what she's
So you
doing.
care what she.
That's right.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Steve.
I was
You-
gonna say, it shows that you're showing interest in them and what they want besides just getting their business and selling their house.
Yeah, it creates it to
Creates
be
that connection with quality.
good, perfect, that's right. What I'm doing is creating the connection or rapport. It doesn't feel like I'm just there to want to get their house sold. By me being interested in them and asking some additional questions. Okay, so I'm gonna start with that. Then I may say, so, I don't know if I have a script book here. We don't. Okay, in your script book, which I don't have here, I thought I had one, but in the script book, there is a, trying to remember what, I used to know what page number it's on in the old script book, but in the new one, I don't remember the page number now. But there is a section that has 21 questions for a listing presentation, okay? So just go to your script book if you want additional questions. I'm gonna give you some more. But if you want to go through and figure out which ones you like, go to your script book and look in the 21 questions, okay? Now, the next one that I usually am going to do, so if you're still good with doing this, Miriam, then I would say, okay, so Miriam, that's, hey, so moving to California, getting in the sun and the beach, like, I'm jealous. That sounds like a great thing. So tell me about your past, so notice I'm going to go back to one of these again. Tell me about your past experience with real estate agents, either good or bad.
Oh my gosh, well, the first time I ever tried to buy a home, I mean, it was a very bad experience because I felt like they didn't listen to me at all. They just sent me crap.
Okay, good. So what did she just tell me?
That
I
they
better
just
listen.
don't- Yeah.
I better listen. Okay, so, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and so then about a year later, I gave it another shot with some other agents, well, one other agent and lender, and it went amazing because they were a good fit for me and they listened to me and, you know, it was a good time, so.
Okay, so you had one bad experience with an agent that didn't listen,
Yeah.
it sounds like. What else did that agent do or not do that you think they should have done?
Maybe followed up with me a little bit more, explained things to me a little bit better because again, like I was very specific, I need a garage, and it's like this lady doesn't know what a garage is, so it just really upset me.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of crazy. If they felt like they didn't even know what a garage is.
Yeah, and it could have been like at that time my approval wasn't as high, but with these other guys, I mean, we got creative when we had somebody else hop on with me. So it's just, you know, really trying to help somebody out versus just, you know, whatever, I have them, but I'm not gonna really do work for them.
Okay, good. So now, from what she just said, what are some key takeaways for me to understand about her based on what she just said?
She wants you to listen to her, she wants you to follow up. keep
So
her
listen, follow up,
Garage.
keep her informed.
And look for what she really is looking for.
The other thing, the other thing she said right there. Now, remember, we're talking about a listing presentation though, so I'm not gonna be looking, we're not gonna be looking at houses. But the other thing she said there that caught my attention that I would want to tuck away to use is they were creative. She mentioned the people who helped her ended up getting creative. So I may want to tuck that away and use that later on. And I like to listen to some of the key words that they're saying to use those words in step 4. Okay. Okay, so good. So now then I'm going to say, okay, you mentioned the other agents that you really liked, that helped you. What are the things that they did that you just loved?
Well, they would follow up with me. I wouldn't have to just reach out to them all the time. They sent me out good properties that I was interested in. They really helped me bump up, like, it wasn't the score, but they helped me bump up my approval, which helped me get into the home I wanted. So, you know, just really trying to help me. I felt like we were family versus the other people. I felt like they hated me, so.
So, okay, good. So now she just said felt like family is important to me here. So I'm going to say, so what kinds of things did they do that made you feel like they were family?
I don't know, they called me.
Okay.
And so they were referred, the first people were referred to me by my friends,
Uh-huh.
and that just didn't work out well. The second people were also referred to me by some other friends, and I don't know, maybe because of that friend, and they had a better relationship, they just treated me better.
They just treated you. Okay.
you know.
So good. So see, because part of what I've like, again, that's going to be a key word I want to probably use later on is she was saying family too, is we just felt like family. And so I'm going to tuck that away to use potentially later as well too. Now, notice I'm saying potentially, I may or may not, it depends on where things go. But notice again, how I asked one question and then a bunch of follow-up questions to dig down deeper on it. What that's doing is that is creating this connection It's helping her to feel understood, to feel important, which is going to reduce the risk and allow her to trust me. So that she'll feel comfortable, okay? Now, I'm gonna, now watch this. So now I'm gonna say, share with me, what's your biggest concern or your biggest worry about, oh, no, actually, sorry, let me back up. One other one I forgot I was gonna do first. So I would say, this would be the next one. So share with me, what would have to happen in a transaction? What would it have to look like for me to be like, you want to get up on the housetop and scream like to everybody, if you're going to sell your house, you got to use Russ. Like, what would that experience have to look like? How would I create that?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna be my agent, you're gonna know all the information,
So now you make sure you're taking notes on this when they start saying this stuff. So go ahead.
So I would like to know the information as soon as you know as well. I don't like being left in the dark.
Okay.
And, I like to be very clear on what's happening, so just write it down or send it out to me so I can clearly see it. And I don't know, just, even if nothing's happening, I still expect a follow-up from you. I feel like I should always be reaching out.
Okay, sure. So one of the things, look, I'm calling right now.
Lisa's calling, no, I do gotta.
Okay, go ahead. I hate it when they do that. So, part of what I want to do there is, as they're saying those things, I want to be taking notes of what she just talked about. Because again, when I get to number 4 in this process, which number 4 is this, what do I do to get a home sold? Ultimately, what I'm going to do is take all the information she's given. So think of it that way, is what we're doing right now is we're trying to get all the answers to the test. We're getting them to tell you everything you need to say or do in order for them to be willing for you to separate yourself and to create the value. So for her to see the value. Aiden?
Is there a personality type that's gonna be annoyed by too many questions like that? Like a driver maybe?
So potentially somebody who is a driver might be, but here's what I've found actually, is typically, I wouldn't say they're going to be annoyed by you doing it. It's just, they're going to give you shorter answers. So the process isn't going to take as long, but they're still not going to be annoyed, because here's why. If she was saying, especially when you start talking about, well, see, and she left, because the next thing I was going to ask her, so the next thing I would have asked, which I don't care what your personality type is, this is going to be important, is I would have said to her, because the main thing she was saying is, she does not want to be the one ever having to call me. I need to be proactive in calling her. So the next thing I would have said is, what do you want that communication to look like? So you mentioned that you don't want to you want me to call you as soon as I know something. So then the next thing I would say to her is, so how do you want me to do that? Do you want me to call you? Do you want me to email you? Do you want me to text you? What's your preference? And then she's going to tell me whatever it is. Then after that, I'm going to say, and how detailed of information are you wanting me to give to you? And this is where, for like a driver, they're going to be able to just say, look, let me probably give you the best example this is a best example I have of a driver, but it's also the worst example of how I as an agent ever was. So, and here's why. It's because I took into account, I just thought, oh, he's a driver, that's what he wants, that's how I'm going to do it, and it bit me bad. So here's what happened. I got an opportunity to, in fact, my assistant, I'm trying to remember what the connection was now. Her brother worked for this guy, I think it was. So he lived just off of Walker Lane. So he lived on Walker Lane, which, are you familiar with Walker Lane, Mariano? Probably not. You, Trey? Okay. Like that's where a lot of, like where John Stockton lived when he played for the Jazz. Like that's where the money is. Walker Lane. Okay. If you can get a listing on Walker Lane, you'll be good. Go door knock. So anyway, so I find he's got 2 investment properties, one in Riverton and one in, actually, I think they were both Riverton. One was right on the border of South Jordan, but 2 properties in Riverton that he wanted to sell. So I call him up, I set the appointment, I drive over onto Walker Lane, up to his house, beautiful house. I go in and sit down and I start doing this. And I could tell really quickly, this guy, like, very successful, just get to the point, let's do it. And here's what he said to me is, look, I know how it works. Because when I asked him how do you want to be communicated with? He goes, look, I know how it works, and you don't need to call me until you get an offer. Like, don't call me. And I was like, okay, so just don't worry about it until we get an offer. Yep, okay. So I list the properties. He signs both you want me to go through it? Nope, I don't care. Just sign it. Okay, sign it. Signs them. I go put the signs out. Now, here's the thing. I knew both the properties were overpriced. When I listed them, I knew there's no way they're going to sell.
That's what you wanted.
What?
That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Price-wise.
Well, and to be honest, I was intimidated by the guy. So I was like, okay, whatever. Because he was such a driver. What?
Did you give him a pricing strategy?
No, I did not. That's what I'm saying. I screwed up so bad. Like, I look back on it, that guy could have been like, I promise you, if he sells his house on Walker Lane, he ain't calling me. Okay, after this experience. But what happened is I listed the properties and I had ringing in my head, don't call me until you get an offer. Well, they're overpriced, so I'm getting no showings, I'm getting no offers, nothing's going on, and I just never calling him. I'm just sitting back like I've never done that, ever. But I did on this one because he was like, I know how it works, don't call me until we get an offer. Okay. So about 3 months goes by and I get a phone call and he's like, hey, I want to cancel my listings. And I was like, why? And he said, because like you haven't even called me and told me I needed to reduce the price or anything. And I said, well, you told me not to call you till I got an offer. And he's like, well, but remember, I also said I know how it works. And so if you were not getting showings and stuff, like I needed to know that. And I was like, oh, but you told me not to call you. So anyway, somewhat to answer your question, that's where I learned. You still go through and just like, you got to ask additional questions, even though they're a driver, because he was like, don't call me. Now, if knowing what I know now, I would have said to him, okay, well, but assuming we get no offers and no showings, then when would you like me to call you? And so, yeah. Okay. So you're going to ask the questions in such a way that you can discover what's important to them. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 4. Number 4 then is this plan of action. Oh, sure. Now you come back.
Accountability partner talk.
That's okay.
But I didn't want to be it.
You what?
It's for accountability partners, but I was like, it puts too much stress on.
Oh, so you were bailing on it?
No, we set it up for like a quarterly type of thing.
Oh, okay. All right. So, okay. So actually, let me do it real quick with her. So Mary, the last thing you had said to me is that you didn't want to have to be calling me. You wanted me to keep you informed. And so how would you like me to do that? Meaning call, text?
I definitely prefer a phone call, but we can't always be on our phones. So if I don't answer, just give me a quick text with the updates. That'd be great. Okay. And at minimum, how often would you like that to take place? As soon as any new information comes in that you feel is important, if it's something that, whatever, doesn't matter, okay, but
okay,
if you feel like I should know, I want to know as soon as like you're done knowing.
Okay. And if nothing's going on, how would you?
I would say if nothing happened, like in a whole week, just follow up and just say, hey, haven't forgot about you, but there's just nothing new.
Okay, perfect. Good.
I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so now then the last question I'm going to do, and then we'll go into the 4 is what is your biggest concern about getting this home sold, or you can think of it as what are you most afraid of, or what's going to keep you up at night? What's that biggest thing that you'd be worried about?
We don't wear shoes in this house, and I know somebody else is gonna buy it. However, we're still here until it's sold, so I don't want people's nasty shoes everywhere. And
You'd rather their nasty socks that are
that
even nastier? I'm just kidding. I'm teasing. Don't do that.
Booties.
Don't do that.
Like,
No, that's where I would
not
actually go
selling the
next.
home anymore.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, just like no walking with their shoes, because again, we're still here, and I'm kind of scared. I want to get the most amount out of this house. I feel like it's worth a lot. We put in a lot of work, and I just feel like we don't want to sell it for less.
Okay, sure. Yeah. And if I were you, I wouldn't want to sell it for less either. So I totally understand. Which, by the way, That's throwing in the empathy is always, anytime you can do that as well, of, hey, if I were you, I'd feel, especially on the what's your concern or your fear, you want to throw in, hey, if I were you, I would be worried about that too. I totally understand where you're coming from on that. You want to throw in that empathy so that they feel like you agree, okay? All right, so now I'm going to go into the plan of action. Now, this is the most difficult part for me in training this to agents, because I have an idea for what we just did, what I'm gonna do here, but it's gonna change depending on the person. So here's what I mean. This plan of action is, so remember, this is this. So we've just done this piece. So now the next step here along the way is gonna be this is number 4, okay? So now I'm gonna take them through the, what do I do to get a home sold? What I want to do is use all the information she's given me here to help her feel comfortable and to create the value to see that I'm the right agent that she wants to be with. Now, remember back here, I wrote it down here as marketing. And I said to you, we're not gonna most likely talk about marketing. The reason I'm not is, did she say anything over here that would lead you to believe she wants to find out how many websites we put it on and the quality of the photographs we're gonna do, and that, you know, did she say anything about that?
No.
So I'm not gonna talk about it over here because she didn't talk about it here. So the reason I say this is the hardest part to train is I don't know what they're gonna say here. But here's what, but based on what she did say, what are the, without me saying anything, you guys tell me, based on what, and you guys on Zoom, we haven't heard from you for a while, so you guys participate too. What 2 or 3 things should I talk about based on what she said down here? What were the 2 or 3 things she was most concerned with?
Communication.
Okay, good. So communication.
I was gonna say, I would definitely go get some goodies for people to walk
Yep.
to their house.
And then the carpet, okay,
And then making sure she gets the most money.
and money. Good. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom get anything else out of what she said? Okay. Now, here's what I'm gonna do then. What I'm gonna talk about here is what we're gonna now talk about with her. Because, and here's the thing, the struggle that a lot of times, especially seasoned agents, typically newer agents do okay with this, but seasoned agents worry too much about, like, well, when are we going to talk about all the great stuff that we do? And I only talk about the stuff we do if she was worried about it over here. Because I can tell you, very, very few people care how many websites you're putting in the house on. Like, meaning, here's probably the best way I like to think of it. If I needed to get surgery, like, I don't go in and ask the surgeon, like, which scalpel he's gonna use, how long is the blade, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I just trust, like, you went to school, you've done your residency, you've probably done a fellowship, like, they've done all, like, I just kind of feel like they're qualified to do it. Now, part of that would be because typically what Miriam already said is that they may have been referred. And if I was referred to her, that's going to be even more helpful. But to some extent, kind of think of it that way of, like, if you needed to hire an attorney, you're probably not going to go sit down with the attorney and be like, okay, I need to know every question you're going to ask in court. Tell me, you know, what are the questions? How are you going to trap them? And how, like, you're kind of just going, okay, I just trust you know what you're doing. And so really, I guess what I'm trying to say to you guys is we are trying to create so much of this, or, you know, really all of this, but I want them to feel so comfortable with me as the agent that it doesn't matter what I'm going to do to get the home sold. They trust that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You follow me? All right. So here's how I'm going to do this then. So here's what I'm going to say. So now that I'm on the plan of action, I'm going to say, okay, so Miriam, you mentioned that the one person who you had a bad experience with was didn't communicate. You felt like they really didn't listen to you. You mentioned she didn't even know what a garage was and all that. So, like, I'm going to start saying some of that stuff. But the person you felt most comfortable with was almost like family. And so for me, one of the things that I want to make sure of is that I become that person as well. I want that to be our type of relationship. And no different than what I said, like my goal actually is at the end of this transaction, I want you up on your housetop screaming to the whole neighborhood, if you need to sell your house, you have to call Russ. Like that's the type of an experience that I want to create for you. And you mentioned communication. So here's what I do with myself. Now you guys pay attention to how I do this because I'm also going to be doing more of this. So remember, I already did a trial close here. I'm going to throw in a bunch more closes here during this piece. So what? So I'm going to say, you mentioned communication. And so one of the things you can count on for me is I'm going to set you up on a system that we have that's going to send you an email once a week with, here's the number of people who have looked at your house. So once a week, you're going to get that automatically from me. Okay. In addition to that, I always call my sellers on Monday between 1 and 2 o'clock. So what number would you like me to call you on Monday between 1 and 2? Okay, great. Now, what did I just get from her?
The number.
Yeah, she just kind of closed herself a little bit of like, on Monday, what phone number do you want me to call you on to give you an update of what's gone on? And she, da, 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 da. Okay, perfect. I'll plan on calling you on Monday between 1 and 2. Now, the other thing you had mentioned though is basically as soon as I know, like when I hang up from the phone call with another agent or whatever, you want to know about it.
Yeah.
Right. So just one of the things that I will promise you is that I'm going to do that. But at minimum, you and I are going to talk every Monday between 1 and 2 o'clock, no matter what.
Okay. Yeah, if it's super important immediately, if not, Monday will be great.
Okay, so define super important to me then.
I mean, if it's like a really good offer, if you feel like it's important.
Okay, so just if I feel like it's something that you would want to know right then,
Yeah.
then I should call you. Otherwise, if it's just the number of people who have looked online, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to know that every day.
Correct. If it's something that's gonna make a huge effect on the transaction, then I want to know.
Okay,
If it's just like, if it's those types of numbers, I mean, it's coming through anyway, right? So.
Right. Okay, so do you feel comfortable enough with what I've talked about of how the communication will be?
Yeah, the communication, yeah, I'm still kind of skeptical about people walking through and stuff.
Okay, good. Well, that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about is people coming through. And when you say skeptical, are you just meaning they're tracking stuff through or what do you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is one of the things that I do that's different than most agents, so I just realized I should have started this communication with the same way of like, I should have started it with, hey, unfortunately, what you described about real estate agents not following up and staying in touch, unfortunately, that is not uncommon. That happens a lot, but not me. Let me tell you how I work. I'm different than so I want to say this is how most agents do it. This is how I do it. So think of it that way. That's your script for this plan of action. All three of these things is going to be, here's how most agents do it. Let me tell you how I do it. Here's how most agents do it. This is how I do it. Or this is what makes me different. This is what sets me apart from everyone else out there. Good. All right. So I've done that with the communication. Then I'm going to say, okay, so you mentioned next that you were most worried about the people walking through the home.
But yeah, you just don't know with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're going to do in terms of that is number one is I'm going to do everything I can. See, most agents are just, if somebody calls and says, can ICO show the house? They just schedule the appointment and show it. So, but not me. Like first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that people have been approved, that they're not just walking through your house because they want to come see the place. Like I'm going to make sure like we're showing it to people who are qualified and can buy your home. Then the other thing that I do that's differently is I'm going to go down and buy some booties from the medical supply store. And we're going to have those by the front door. And I'm going to make sure that everybody that comes through puts those on before they walk through the house. So that way you don't have their gross shoes or socks even walking through the house, that we're having them put on the booties to walk through the house so that when you don't have to worry about them tracking something.
Awesome. Yeah,
Good. So how do you feel about that?
I feel so good.
Okay, good.
But you know, what about that price? I'm trying to get like 8 million. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, perfect. So let me talk to you about that in terms of the money. Is most agents are gonna show up and just do whatever, like whatever the offer is, they're just gonna be coming in and going, okay, well, you should take it. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of agents beat people up over the price to get them to just accept the offer, but that's not how I work. Like, that's not the way that I do it. So for me, in fact, what I'm gonna do, part of what I told you is I wanna find out if they're qualified. Part of that is I'm gonna find out if their lender has pursued every option available to make sure that you're not having to come out of pocket on any money. So,
Real quick side question. So do you just reach out to the agent like you generally and you ask them for the pre-approval? or
No.
default, or you-
no, I don't typically.
So how do you know? if
So,
you're
Well, I
qualified?
don't. But in this case, so yeah, good point. Thank you for bringing that up. On a normal transaction, I wouldn't be asking every single person that comes through, are they pre-approved? But because of what I'm committing, because of that's a concern for her, of the people walking through the house, I'm going to do it. So I'm just going to do that. So yes, anybody that calls, all I'm gonna say is, have they been pre-approved?
Wow.
And the agent's gonna say yes. So, okay.
But that's generally how you do it. So if you do it for like, because obviously higher price points, I had people.
Yeah,
submitting a
so-
showing for that, and it's like, but you told me 400,000, and you're still not even approved, like you can't.
Yeah,
do a
so
CD.
if it was a home that was a multi-million-dollar home, then actually I probably would say
Send it
the
over.
seller wants to see the either proof of funds or approval before you walk through the house.
Okay.
So like, but that's probably gonna be a $5 million. I mean, even at 1 or 2 million, I'm probably just gonna have, they've been approved.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Which, do you guys want a funny story on that? So I had, okay, a little bit of a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can. So I had a guy sign up on my website. This was probably over 10 years ago. But I had this guy sign up on my website and I was talking to him on the phone. And as I talked to him, he said he was going to be a cash buyer. And as I talked to him, what I found is he was coming from, Cambodia.
Oh,
So he was coming from Cambodia, wanted to look at this house that was in Harriman at, and remember, this is 10 years ago, and the home was probably worth 500,000 then, so probably over $1 million now. But, and it was listed by an agent that was with the company I was with. And it had been kind of this on and off thing. Like, he was like, I'm in town from Cambodia and I want to, I was checking out some properties. I'm to drive by, blah, blah, anyway. Kind of, I was always a little like, is this real? Like, because no offense, but like, I just was like, who's going to come from Cambodia and have $500,000 cash? Like, and so I was a little leery, but I was also at the same time like, who knows? Maybe they do. And so anyway, so he finally comes into town. I finally get to meet him and we go walking through these properties and I'm still inside like, well, because for some reason I had to go meet him at his parents' house, which was in West Jordan. And like, it was just like starter home kind of a thing. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. But so they go, yeah, we want to buy this house. And I said, okay, well, if it's going to be cash, I know the listing agent well enough that she's going to want a proof of funds letter before they're even going to consider this offer. So he sends me over a proof of funds letter on bank letterhead that was like the Bank of Cambodia or something. And I was like, here it is. And I sent it over and the agent calls me up, and I've known this lady for a long time. So she called me up. She's like, Russ, is this real? And I was like, yeah, of course it's real. She's like, you feel good about it? I'm like, yes, I feel good about it. And I hung up the phone and was like, I really don't feel good about it at all. Like, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is real or not, but like, I don't know. So anyway, they do their inspections. There's no problems. We're getting close to closing. And the guy calls me and he goes, hey, is it okay if we don't use the cash out of that account if we wire it from a different account? And I was like, yeah, they don't care where it's coming from, like, it doesn't matter. And he was like, okay. So the day of that we were supposed to close, like, I called up my buddy was the title company, the escrow officer at the title company. So I called him up, his name was Jeff, and I was like, Jeff, like, I need you all day long to like watch that wire account, because like, I need to know, like, today's kind of the day of either I look good that yes, it closed, or I look like an idiot because no money ever shows up. Yeah. And anyway, he called me later on, like, I just got the wire, and I was like, are you serious? Like, I was like, for real? Yeah. So anyway, it closed. And the lady, it was just kind of a weird transaction. So the lady that was the listing agent though, she was like, I just was nervous the whole time. And I was like, oh, really? I wasn't at all.
Wow.
But she was like, I mean, is this really legit? And I was like, yeah. So, but then I was like, then I started wondering, I wonder if this is like money laundering. Like, is that how they get the money into the country? And I was like, no, that's stupid. And no lie, like 2 weeks after we closed, the guy calls me up. Hey, yeah, we decided we want to move to Atlanta. We need to sell this house. And I was like, oh crap, this is money laundering. That's just how they get the money in the country. And then they're gonna, which the problem was, so I guess it was more than 10 years ago, because it was right, they bought right at the peak of 2007, 2008. And so it probably wasn't weeks, but it was months that he called and was like, hey, we need to sell. But they wanted, of course, to not pay any commission. So they overpriced the house and it never sold. And I don't know, it never did sell. At least I should look back and see if they have ever sold it. The last time I checked, it had still never gone on the market. So then I was like, okay, maybe it's not money laundering then. But anyway, so come to find out that this guy had married a girl from Cambodia, and her mom was like a princess so they just had a ton of money. But anyway,
See, don't judge.
yeah, don't judge. No, trust, but you
The
know,
less you know, the better you are.
the what?
The less you know, the better you are.
Yeah, I was worried about that too. Of like, I don't know, like, I don't want to go to jail over this. But I was like,
He
I
said
didn't
he
do
was a
anything, like-
rice farmer.
yeah, so, but it closed and everything was good. All right, so you good on how to handle the plan of action? The plan of action is you're gonna take all the stuff that they said, you're gonna then use that to say, most agents don't do it that way, but let me tell you how I do it, and then you're gonna come up with, so like we used on the finance part, like, I typically am not gonna get that from every single person, but if she's concerned about it, then I will on this particular transaction. Every person who wants to show the house, I am gonna ask, are they pre-approved? I'm not gonna say, give me the proof of funds, give me their pre-approval letter, but I'm just gonna trust that the other agent is gonna tell me the truth of, hey, have they been pre-approved? So. All right, so the plan of action is really where all of this stuff, so between 3 and 4, well, really 1 through 4 should have created all of this stuff, including the trial closes there. Can you see that? Do you have questions on it? All right, because next is to price. But what did I say over here? When do we talk about price?
The very end. Or you don't even talk about price.
Well, no, I'm going to
Well,
talk
you talk about
price
the price of the house.
When?
The commission
When they choose.
at the end.
once they've chosen me. So now the next thing on this is I'm going to draw a line across here again. I got to find out if she's chosen me. Because because number 4 here is the market, remember? Or price. And I'm not gonna, or 5, sorry, 5 here is number 3 here. Did I confuse you? Are you good?
We're good.
Okay, because number 5 is where we're now gonna talk about price. The market price and stuff, but remember, I don't do that till I know they've chosen. So watch this. So here's what's gonna happen is I'm gonna say, so Miriam,
Yes,
how do you feel about everything we've talked about?
I feel pretty good.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100%, 1 being no way. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at in terms of you and me being the agent to help you get your home sold?
Like a 9.
9. Okay, good. Now, here's the thing. I am not going to go on from this until I'm a 10 or until I find out 9 is the highest she's ever going to rate. So watch. So I'm gonna say, okay, so 9, which is great. I appreciate that. What would have to happen for you to fill at a 10?
You know, it's not you or anything. I just don't want to say 10 because 10 means like, so. no.
Okay, yeah, no, I totally understand that. I'm the same way. I always feel like even if somebody did a perfect job, there's probably something they could have done better. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so really, in essence, there's nothing else I could say that you could think of that would make it better.
Yeah, I mean, from all the other appointments that I've had, I feel the best with this one.
You do feel the best with it. Okay, good. So what she just told me is I can go on to the next step then. But what if she said 7? And I said, okay, what has to happen for me to be 10? And she gave me whatever it is, whatever she comes up with as to a reason why I'm not at a 10, then I'm gonna try to deal with that in the same manner up here. So I am not going here until I know she's chosen me. So what if she hasn't? What if she totally doesn't feel comfortable? So do a 5 or something. Scale of 1 to 10, where are we at?
Like
A 2, okay, great. So I'm doing a really good job then. Is probably how, if they said that, I'd be like, so I've done a really good job with it so far.
It's my favorite number, so.
2 is? Oh, okay.
That.
So what would have to happen for me to get to a 10?
You know, I would just have to really feel confident that I will be making the most amount of money, even with having to pay your commission.
Okay, so how could anybody demonstrate that to you? Like, what would I need to do to, so now notice, all I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna deal with it to try to get to be a 10. So how would I have to do that?
I mean, I want to see the monies. I want to see the breakdown.
Okay, so if I gave you a net sheet that showed you the breakdown and stuff, is something you're feeling you need?
Yeah.
Okay, great, let's do that. And then bam, I'm gonna now work on the net sheet. Okay, we do the net sheet. How do you feel now?
I feel, wow, my God, that's the number. Yeah.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at now?
Like a 9.
9, okay, good. Perfect. So do you get it? How I'm gonna do it? What if they say anything besides a 10, what has to happen to be a 10? And if they just say, because there are people that are like, nobody could ever be a 10. Okay, so really for you, 9's the best I could ever achieve, but that's where we're at. Yep, okay, good. Then let's go on. Go ahead.
What if they bring up commission?
Okay, let's do it. Okay, Trey, so do it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at?
I'm a 7.
7. Okay, so what has to happen for me to be at a 10?
I just want to make sure that I know that I'm making the most money while I'm not paying you $100,000 in commission.
Okay.
So I just kind of figure something out there.
So it sounds like, if I understand what you're saying, then is that as long as we can come to an agreement on commission, that you're good with me being your agent?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how I'm gonna handle it, is I'm gonna, if they're worried about the price of, like, if they said, well, we haven't even talked about the price of where you're gonna list my home at. So until we know that, then I'm gonna say, okay, but is it safe to assume if we can agree on the same price that you would list your home with me? Yes. Is it safe to assume that if we can come to an agreement on commission that you'll list with me? Yes, then I'm gonna move on. Does that make sense? Because that's the next step anyway. And as long as I can get an agreement that yes, because ultimately what you just said to me, Trey, is I've chosen you. We just need to now get on the price. But what if they said no? Is it safe to assume that if we can agree on a commission that you're gonna list your house? No. Okay, so what's holding you back? Like, here, at the end of the day, they're either gonna say only one of two things. I just don't feel comfortable with you, okay? Or they're gonna say, well, I've got somebody else, which that's why I wanna find this out. Because if he says, well, I've got somebody else that actually was gonna come out and talk to us after you as well. Okay, so if he said that, so Mariana, you be that. So what has to happen?
You know, I gotta wait because I got somebody else coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so then let's do this, Mario. Now, this is how I handle it. Let's do this then. Let's actually pause in what we're doing and let's have you meet with them first. Okay, and then after you've met with them, I want to get back together to see, did they bring up anything that I hadn't already covered? Is there any reason that blah, blah, blah?
What if Alma comes through and gets it signed?
Okay, good. That is a risk. Is you do run a risk that some other agent is going to come through and get it signed. You do run that risk.
But you can tell them like, you know, if you feel good with me, I definitely understand if you want to see, you know, check out.
Well, so for me, it's ultimately, let me say it this way. I am gonna do everything I can to get them to sign it right then.
And you can tell them like, we can rip it up if you end up feeling more
Yep.
comfortable with that.
Yep, I'm gonna try everything I can, but there are some people that are gonna say, no, I'm meeting with this person no matter what.
You know, Russ, I feel pretty good about everything you talked about. Like I said, I want to meet with Jeff.
Okay.
Steve. But I just want to know, just really quick, can you just tell me about why your rough estimate on the commission's gonna be, your percentage?
So, yeah, it's a great question on the commission. So until we go through the next piece, I actually am not still sure of where we're gonna be on commission. So let's do this. Let's have you go meet with Steve, see what he thinks, but and then this is how I try to stop him from listing with some other agent, Miriam, is I'm gonna say, but I want the same promise from you that you won't list with them until I have to come back to answer your questions on commission and all that. And so like, actually, I love the idea. When I can tell that I'm not gonna get around them meeting with another agent. Yeah, when I can tell I'm not gonna get around that, I'm gonna say, I love the idea of you actually doing that. Here's why. Is it's gonna help you feel even more comfortable and see the difference between me and other agents. So I love that. I want you to meet with them, but will you give me the same promise that you won't sign with them until you and I have had a chance to get back together?
Now, do you, at that moment, Russ, do you bring up the point of, okay, you know what? I want you to meet with the other agent because I want you to find out what they have to offer. But I don't want you to ask them, well, are you gonna be doing this because this other agent is this? I just want you to find out what it is they're gonna do. Do you bring that up at all?
No, I typically don't bring that up. Here's why.
Okay.
So actually, let me even do it this way. I probably should start the class like this, actually. So rewind, we're gonna start all over. You guys good with that? You got another 2 hours? Okay. Here's how most what?
We need more food, sorry.
Yeah, get more food. Here's how most agents listing presentation looks like. Most agents listing presentation looks like this. Mariano, thanks for having me over. Let me show you why you should list your house with me. Last year, I was the top agent in blah, blah, blah. And actually, Mariano, just so you know, I am the #1 agent in my cubicle.
Nice to hear.
Yeah, nobody sells more, nobody in my cubicle sells more than me. So I'm the best. And here's all my awards. This is why I'm so good.
Okay.
That's what most agents listing presentation is. Let me tell you, you're basically an idiot if you don't list. That's what most agents presentation looks like. Or if it's not that, then it looks like this. I'm a Century 21. Century 21 came about in 1972. And our relocation company that we work with is called Cardis. Cardis is the #1 relocation company in the world, and we have an account with them. We have 8,500 offices across the whole world as part of Century 21. And so when you list your home with Century 21, you know you're getting exposed to the whole world. Like, how much would you like this presentation from somebody where they're like, and then the plumbing system, and then let's talk about the electrical system.
Very salesy.
So real quick, do you actually, when you go on your listing presentations, you have the listing packet, and then do you have like a packet that you use as a master that you just have and flip through, or? do
Great
you give
question.
them a packet?
So as a general rule for me, here's how I like to think of it. You are the listing presentation. I look at it as I'm the listing presentation. So to answer your question, I could not tell you the last time I took a pamphlet or a printout with here's what Century 21 does.
Yeah.
As part now. You can use one as like a pre-listing packet. Here's some information, or a leave behind if you wanted to, of here's some stuff about it.
Yeah.
I do not like,
I feel
it's
like
been over 20 years since I took something with me as like, let me show you.
So pretty much you just take the CMAs with you? Or do you
I take the
that
CMA
you?
with me and I'm the presentation. this is the presentation.
Pretty much study all that and become that. Become good at asking questions to discover what's important to them so that you can then answer their questions, resolve their concerns, all of that. When you do that, you're their agent. Does that make
So
sense?
let me ask you a question. So you take the CMA and the net sheath, right? Is that
Correct.
the only thing that you probably take to them?
Yeah, that's the only things that I personally take with me is comparables and a net sheet. And I gotta be honest, half the time lately, I don't even take the net sheet. I should, but I've gotten lazy and I don't even take the net sheet. But you should. I think I'm a believer big time in net sheet and the comparables. Yeah, that's for me. Because again, I may not even show them the comparables if we can't get past this.
Might be good to help you get past it.
So I know, especially as a newer agent, you feel like you need to take that. And the good news is we have it. So you can get it off Toolkit CMA, or which I'm going to start training on this really soon, is Moxie Works. The Moxie Present is what it's called. If you go on 21 online, Moxie Present, you can get basically what you want from off that kind of thing as well. So if you want it, take it. But I'm telling you, take it and have it just as if I get stuck, I can pull it out and use it, but you don't need it. Do this.
Do you have a damage control class, Russ? What I mean by that?
Yeah, that's everything that goes on outside of this class is that.
Yes.
So what do you mean by damage control?
Like damage control, like for example, I had a presentation to go to.
Yeah.
It was my neighbors, right?
Yep.
I have an awesome relationship with them. I mean, when I go on vacation, they're the ones that watch my
Yeah.
dogs, my house and everything.
Yeah.
Last time I went, they went and plowed my snow off my driveway, and I did the same thing for them and stuff like that. So because of that, I felt very relaxed. So it was almost like this. Hey, Russ, this is what we're gonna list your house for. So I skipped everything else because I already felt that they had already chosen me and everything. And I just pretty much gave them, okay, this is what you're gonna, this is the CMA, this is, here it is. So then we kind of like,
Think about it.
and then I asked them, before I saw one of the damages that I did, is that I didn't ask him what they were planning,
Yeah.
what they were expected to get from their house or any of that stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's kind of, they're like, well, shit, dude, I was expecting to get $1 million, and now you're gonna sell it and now you're gonna sell it for 100,000. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So now, how can you?
So how do you
is
go
there a
back and
damage
salvage
control?
that?
How do you go back and salvage that?
So probably here's the best way I'd answer it, because ultimately what you just said, what I heard basically is the damage control is how do I get them to be realistic on price? Or no?
That and how can, so obviously now they're really questioning whether I'm gonna get the most for their house or not. too,
Okay.
You know?
But
Okay.
you listed it though, right?
So here's
No,
what
not-
I, here's what I,
Not this one, this is another one.
okay, so here's how I like to do it. So that's a great question. If you're okay, let me do the next piece of
Yes.
this and then I'll answer that.
Okay.
Because I'll show you how I do it. Because this, yeah, so let me go into the pricing. But is everybody good with this and I'm ready to move to pricing? Okay, all right, so now on pricing. Where I'm gonna start with is, remember over here was gonna be the macro. So I wanna give them big picture of what's going on. Then I wanna talk about pricing, and then I wanna talk about.
Estaba atrás, pobrecito.
Oh, you don't wanna know it.
I know, it's like it
It was
sounds
all
like.
about you.
We're
Oh,
muting you,
no.
Mariella, sorry. I'm muting you because Mariana said you were swearing. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
Don't make
Okay.
her come down here.
Okay, so what?
Don't make her come down.
No, she's in St. George. She's not coming. Although she does come up here from time to time. Huh?
Sometimes I do.
I know. All right, so Okay, so macro, here's how you're gonna do that. So when I'm now gonna move to pricing, I'm gonna start with the big picture. So what I always start with is, if somebody asked you today, what's going on in the real estate market, how would you answer? Tell me what's going on in the market.
It's wild, it's so inflated, I mean, you gotta have $1 million to get it.
The rates are.
Okay, don't say that.
Rates are increasing.
Oh, I thought I was. a
Okay,
person,
okay.
not an agent.
Yeah, no, I'm saying for you as an agent, how would you answer if just somebody on the street said, oh, you're an agent, what's going on in the market? So you said
Rates.
rates are going up. Good. I think that's important.
The market is booming.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's booming.
I ask some more questions, like, what do you mean as a buyer or seller, or what are you talking about?
Well, so for what I'm meaning though is just right now, just give me big picture, what's happening in our real estate
You
market.
know, Utah's a development state, so if you're trying to do anything with real estate, right now is the time.
Okay, so go even bigger picture than that.
So I would say, I would say that, and then I would say, you know, and as of today, we found out the interest rates are at 3.75. So we need to move,
Lock in.
lock in on whatever we're gonna
Okay,
do, because.
So yeah, let me help you guys then. Here's how,
So no,
here's
you
how I
suck.
would do it.
You
Yeah,
suck.
yeah, you suck. No. Here's how I would do it.
We're buyers agents.
Are we in a buyer's market or a seller's market today?
Sellers.
Okay, so that's where I would always start with, is for me, when I'm going through this, is I would be saying to the seller, let me tell you what's going on in the market today. We are in a seller's market. What that means is our inventory right now is still at record lows. Then I would go to, but even though we're in a seller's market, we are starting to see interest rates creeping up. What, so now you guys tell me, what does that mean for sellers? That's right. So
Making money.
good, that's what I want to say, is I want to say, so inventory is really low, but because interest rates are going up, the buyer's buying power is going down. So you got sellers' home prices going up, we got buyers' buying power going down. What do you think that means?
Trash is money.
The house.
I
price
wouldn't,
will come down.
see, and I don't think a crash is coming, but I would say it's going to level off. And I actually, this is my own personal opinion, is because the way that it works is supply and demand. And because our supply is so low and the demand is still high, we're gonna not see as many offers. We're not gonna see prices really, I mean, the economists are predicting our prices are still going up like 15%. And so you may even want to say that.
So maybe like stabilize though.
But to me, I feel like our prices are at the high end and probably are gonna stay there. So what that means for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, so now I'm gonna start to move from the macro into the pricing. So you just wanna, like, if it was reversed, I would be saying, look, there are homes flooded on the market. We have to be one of the lowest priced homes on the market or we're not gonna sell.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting with the big picture and what that means for them. So I'm starting with the big picture. Yes, we're in a seller's market, inventory is low, but interest rates are creeping up, which means buyers' buying power is going down, which also means there aren't as many people that can afford houses today. So we're going to see less transactions take place. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get your home sold, or that it necessarily even means the prices are coming down, but it is getting more, we are going to see more houses coming on the market and more houses not selling. So what that means for you is we got to make sure that in your area, for your style of home, we are one of the best priced houses. And we're going to want to keep an eye on that, because if we aren't getting offers really quick, then there's probably a problem with either the price or the condition of your home. Because those two things are what's going to make the difference, is the price we set and the condition. Now, let me just pause for a minute and ask you guys, who has control of the price and the condition of their house?
The buyers,
The buyers.
No.
the sellers.
The seller is the one who determines the condition of their house and ultimately the price we're going to set on their house. So part of why I say that is you got to realize and I want to get this across to them, a big part of the responsibility of getting your home sold is on you as the seller, because you got to make sure the condition looks good and the price is good. So my job, here's how I like to tell them on this. My job is to be an interpreter of the market. The market speaks in encrypted language and I'm here to interpret it for you. And what that looks like is this, and then I'm going to go into the pricing strategy, which if we get no offers and no showings within the first 3 weeks, and I probably would say 2 weeks in our current market. If we go 2 weeks, and you've had no showings, no offers, we need to reduce the price between 7 and 10%.
I heard somebody saying 3 to 5.
Some showings.
If you're getting some showings and no offers.
Um,
If you get no showings, no offers, I always say you need to reduce it between 7 and 10. If you tell them they need to reduce it between 7 and 10, which are they gonna pick 7 or 10? That's why we say 7 or 10, you gotta reduce it between 7 and 10% is because if you said 3 to 5, then what are they gonna choose?
3.
If you said 3 to 10, what are they gonna choose? Like, so for me, it's always 7 to 10%. We need to reduce at least 7 to 10%. If we go 2 or 3 weeks and we're having some showings, and I define that as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, you're between 5 and 7% overpriced. We need to reduce it between 5 and 7. If you're within 4%, you'll get an offer. Okay. So that's what I'm going to tell them on pricing. Then CMA, we're going to pull it out and go, okay, let's look at it. Okay. So now I'm going to go through and show them, here are the sold properties. So I'll have, 3 sold properties here, 3 under contract properties, 3 active properties. If there are 3, there might not be. But whatever it is, I'm going to have sold, under contract, active. I personally don't use expired. Some people like to have 3 expireds over here too, so you could do that.
They can do it if they're just there, or if there's a good one that you can be like, hey, this one's a little lower price, so why it's expired.
Yeah, if there is a good one, I would use it, but
I don't know if you throw them in either.
I typically don't use them. So I use the solds, the under contract and actives, and then I'm going to say to the seller, where do you think we ought to list your home? Based on what you've seen right here, where do you think we should list it? And then I want to see what they say. Now, in the event that they say, and they will do this, well, what do you think? Then I always say, this is the golden rule. The person with the gold makes the rules. So, just kidding. But thanks for laughing, because nobody else did.
I thought it was really.
I know, it is good,
I'm
one,
not
isn't it?
kissing ass.
But
See?
ultimately, I say, at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Sellers, your decision, I'm here to provide information. So if you want my opinion, so here's the thing, you want to make sure they understand all their options, which is this. Then from there, you can make a recommendation. Here's what I would recommend, based on this, if it were me, this is what I would do.
And do you give them like an exact number or a range?
I usually try to do a range, but I'm actually not opposed to saying an exact number. Here's why. A lot of times agents would say, you should list it for $499.9. And I'm like, no, that was great strategy like 30 years ago when I first got in the business. But today, I would never do that. I'm going to put it as I would put it at 500.
I legit told my people, I was like, psychology, people like 9s, we'll throw some 9s in there. And we did, like.
Well, and that's fine, but here's the reason I don't. If somebody goes on the internet and does a search and your home is listed at $499.9 and they do a search from 500 to 525, you're not showing up. That's the only reason I don't do it that way, is because just the way that the searches work, you're limiting yourself if you're not on a round number potentially. Now, you have to kind of look at the different websites to see kind of their, but typically if you drop down, you're missing out on somebody that says, we want a property from 500 to 510 or whatever. Okay. All right. So now we'll come back to Mariano. Here's how we handle it. Now, what do you do in the scenario where we did this and I said, I would recommend you list it at 500,000. And they go, no way, I want to try 550. Okay. For me, I'm going to make sure they understand this pricing strategy first. Will they follow the pricing strategy? If they will, great. If they won't, I'm not sure I want the listing. Now, that's not 100% true, but it depends on what's driving them. If it's just, oh, we just want to sell, I may not take the listing. If it's, no, I got a job transfer, I have to move, I'll take the listing. Go ahead, Abe.
And that's when you bring in like, oh, hey, I'm here to provide information. You're the one who decides.
Yep.
But whatever you decide, as long as you follow the pricing strategy, we're gonna get your home sold. And I'll
Yep.
explain the pricing strategy once you decide what you want to go.
Yep,
Is that
that's
how
great.
you would do it.
Yep, I love it. All right, now, so here's how I handle it though. in the scenario, so let me explain it this way to you. So I had another property that I did, I had a bunch of bad ones right around the peak of the market, but in 2007, 2008. But I had one that, typically what happens with pricing property looks like this. Your highest price you're gonna get for that home takes place within the first 3 weeks. As soon as you get out past 3 weeks, so this right here basically is 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, the price of the property goes down, and then over time, it'll slowly kind of go back up, but your listing probably expired somewhere here. So, my next door neighbors growing up. So my whole, from when I was born until I moved out of the home I grew up in, these people lived right next to us. Well, after I moved out, my mom sold the house, moved away. Those people's parents ended up selling their house and moving to South Jordan. And then the mom died, and then the dad died. When the dad died, I got a call from the daughter that was my age. Her name is Leslie. She called me and said, hey, dad's died. We need to sell his house. Will you come out and help us? Great. So I go out there. And remember, this was right as in 2007. I wish I should look back at the exact date, 2007, 2008. But it was, well, it probably was 2008 because prices were headed down. And I said to her, when I got to this part, the macro, I was like, let me tell you what's going on in the market. Prices are going down. There's tons of properties on the market. We got to be aggressive on it, blah, blah, blah. Well, she says, well, dad got an appraisal right before he got sick. And that appraisal was for $415,000. Okay. Now, my CMA that I had done, the sold properties I brought out, I told her that I thought it would sell for 400.
You're looking at comps from 100 days back.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't remember how far back they were.
Within the 100 days.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably hurting a little bit.
Yeah, so I was seeing the prices were already starting to come down. So I said, we need to list it at 400. But of course, they had an appraisal not long before for this. So of course, they want to list it at 420. I think is what we did, if I remember right. Maybe at 425. But I said, we can try it if you want and see, but I really think you're going to sell at 400. So now this is how you handle it. So here's what I said to her is I said, here's what I think we should do is let's get together in 3 weeks and let's take a look at what's gone on. And then we'll make a decision what we need to do. So I explained the pricing strategy to her. So 3 weeks go by, we've had, we might have had one showing. I don't remember if we did or not. We had hardly anything, no offers. So we get together and this is what you want to do, Mariano. So then after that 3 weeks, I went and pulled what homes, since I had listed their house, what homes had sold. And there was like 1 or 2. I found the ones that had gone under contract, there were 2 or 3, and then I found what was active. When I went back to her, what I said was, okay, so 3 weeks later, I came out and I said, okay, when we first met, I told you I thought we could sell it for 400. Today, I'm telling you now, I think that, let's keep my color theme the same here, that in order for us to get the home sold, you're gonna have to go to 385. Because that's what this now is telling me. So that's what you want to do is say, let's look at what's happened in the market. Now, here's what you're wanting to do ultimately, what I'm wanting to do is show them, since we listed your house, here's the ones that have gone, buyers bought, they chose a different house. See, up here, they're thinking, oh, well, the person who paid the most on this would have paid the most for my house if it would have been on the market. Now I'm able to show them, your home was out there. It was a choice for the buyers, and this is what they chose. The under contracts is what they chose. Yours was an option. They didn't choose it. And I don't necessarily say it that blunt. Sometimes I do. Sometimes you have to say it that blunt to them of the buyers chose this. What's even better is if you can find out that the person who bought one of these looked at yours.
At a showing.
Oh,
When you can say they looked at your house and they chose that one. Why do you think they chose that one? Well, probably because it was a better value. Well, in their mind, at least, in the buyer's mind, that one fit their needs better. So, okay, so now, so that's what I did. And then she said, okay, let's reduce the price. Guess what we reduced the price to?
400.
400. So 3 weeks go by and I go back out and do the same thing and I go, okay, here's the new properties that have sold. Here's the ones that have gone under contract. Here's the ones that are active. My recommendation to you is 365.
Just keep it,
Right?
yeah, just run it.
So I said, you should go to 365. Guess what we reduced the price to?
385.
385.
Wouldn't you at that point bring up, look, we keep dropping, but you're dropping to where it was 3 weeks ago. This trend's gonna keep going down, down, down.
I probably should have, but I didn't until 3 weeks later, then I did exactly that. That's exactly what I did, is 3 weeks later, I went back out and I said, okay.
That's sufficient data, or was it?
Yeah,
9
I-
weeks now.
I went back out and I said to her, okay, if we're gonna keep playing this game, the next time I come out, I'm gonna tell you it's 350 and you're gonna wanna go to. Well, sorry, when I went back out, I said, I'm telling you right now, it's 350. If you don't reduce it to 350, then I'll be coming back next time and telling you, and this, no kidding, I said this, it's 335. That's where it's gonna go to. So do you want to keep chasing the market down, which is what we were doing? And she said, okay, let's reduce it. So instead of from 385, we went to 350. We immediately got it sold.
Was it at that list price? More?
No, at 347.5 is, so because we listed at 350. Within a week, we got an offer for 340. And I said, let's go back at 340. So what I recommended is I said, they're probably wanting us to go to 345. Which, by the way, I had done such a good job on this. In telling her in a month from now, it's gonna be 335. When they offered us 340, she was like, let's just take it. And I said, well, hold on. Let's go back. I said, they're probably wanting us to go to 345. Let's counter at 347.5, and then they'll counter at 345 and we can accept it. And she said, okay. So we countered at 347.5 and then they accepted. So she was happy as could be. So that's, if I were you, that's how I would handle it, is I would go sit down with him and say, let me show you, because like you said, the fear is they're thinking that it's you, it's not the market.
Yeah.
You
And
gotta
part of
take
the
it.
problem too is that I assume that because I think they love me as a neighbor. Oh, yeah, okay, but not as a realtor.
Yeah,
So how do
exactly.
I go back and get them to?
So
love
how
me
you're
as a-
gonna do it is this, go back
Just
and
that,
say,
okay.
let's look, let me pull up and show you what's gone on in the market. Because then you're taking it off of, it's not me, like, especially when you can show them, look, this property that went under contract or this one that sold, that agent showed your house. So those buyers looked at yours and they chose not to. So it's taking the onus off of you and putting it onto them, really, of like, look, the buyers are out still buying. They're just not choosing yours. And it's either because of the price or the condition. And if the condition's good, you can say, we know it's not the condition. You've done a good job. Therefore, the only thing it can be is price. All right. So number 6, and then we'll wrap up here. Yeah, sorry. Oh, I'm over time too. I apologize. Last thing then is,
3 minutes, geez.
I know. The last thing then is close. So the last thing you're gonna do then is you're gonna close, okay? So, but here's what that looks like. So Miriam,
Mhm.
based on what we've talked about, are you comfortable with the price of 400?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good starting point and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, great. So do you want the home to hit the market on Saturday or do you want to wait till Monday?
Let's put it up Monday.
Monday. Okay, great. I just need you to sign this paper. Like, notice how easy the close is if you've done it right. Because all along here, I've already told her back here, hey, if you're comfortable and confident, I'm just gonna ask you to sign the paperwork. So that's why I now just said, okay, great, all we gotta do is sign the paperwork. Notice up here, are you good with that if I call you on Monday? Yes, okay, I'm gonna go get the booties and I'll bring them by and drop them off to your house on Friday. Is that okay?
Yes.
And then we're gonna talk money down here, but I may say, I need to get the photographer scheduled to come out, and the sooner I can get him out, the sooner we can get the home on. So how soon can you have the house ready for the photographer? I can have it by Friday. Okay, great. Then now, when we get to here, I'm like, okay, so I've got the photographer scheduled to come out on Friday. Do you want a house to hit on Monday or Saturday?
I want it to hit on Monday.
Monday. Okay, great. So I just need you to sign the paperwork.
Okay.
Okay. What other questions?
It's all easy now until we're there in the hot.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, God, what
Yeah.
Hey, Russ,
Yes.
the thing that I heard from the gentleman that talked about his neighbor, it kept saying to me was, don't ever put the cart before the horse, regardless of relationship. Like he said, his relationship as a friend was great, but not as a realtor. So what I'm taking away from that is no matter what, go through exactly what you did for us today.
Yeah, in fact, thank you for saying that, Chris. Here's what I would say is, for me, I feel like what you want to do is approach it with them as, hey, we're neighbors and we're friends, but this is a business transaction, and yes, I still want to be friends, but I want to treat you like I do any client, and maybe even better than any client. And for any client, I first want to sit down and I just want to find out about your, and then here's how I'd get into it. I want to find out about your needs, wants, and ultimately what you expect. And then I'll share with you what I would expect. I want to talk to you about what I do to get a home sold. And then we'll talk about the market, how that affects your price. And then ultimately, if you're comfortable, we'll get your homes listed. Sound good?
Yeah, because part of the thing that I want to go back and tell them, really, one of the things that I want you to appreciate is that out of all the agents out there, probably the one that would care the most, what this house
Exactly.
sells for, it's me, because I'm your neighbor. So if I sold your house for 100,000, my house is only worth 100,000. If I sold it for 600,000, my house is
So,
worth 600,000.
okay, good. So here's what you should do. Schedule an appointment with him and go sit. What you want to do is go tackle it head on. Right now, go, I feel like maybe a little frustrated with me. And hey, if I were you, I would be too. So let me apologize of, like, I approach this as too much of a friendship. Let's move it to more of a business relationship, and let me just take you through and then go right into this.
I like that approach.
Okay.